Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Janavallabha Girivardhari. Gopi Janavallabha Girivardhari. Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana. Jamuna Tira Vanachari. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. So, since we are a little short-handed on our side also, forgive me, I'm going to have to take this coat off because I turned the heat on earlier and now it's a little warm. So, anyway. Thank you very much for coming. I know for some of you it is a big sacrifice, giving up the Super Bowl. But you get extra credit. Okay. So let me just get this straight. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Okay. On this 11th day of February 2024 in San Diego, we're speaking at the Krishna Fest Sunday evening, and we're going to be exploring a couple of verses from the Bhagavad Gita, as it is. This next one, those who attend my classes or have heard them occasionally will know that I like to quote this verse a lot. Practically every class, somehow I end up quoting this verse. So I figured, well, let me give it to you in the Krishna Fest. It's in the 5th chapter, text number 22. And the verse goes like this. Yehi sangsparshija bhoga dukkha yonaya evate adyantavanta konteya nateshu ramate buddha. Translation. An intelligent person does not take part in the pleasures that are due to contact of the material senses with their objects. O son of Kunti, this is Krishna speaking to Arjuna, son of Kunti. O son of Kunti, such pleasures are the sources of all misery, and they have a beginning and an end. And so the wise do not delight in them. I'll read the purport, Srila Prabhupada's explanation. Material sense pleasures are due to the contact of the material senses with their objects, and all these pleasures are temporary because the body itself is temporary. A liberated soul is not interested in anything which is temporary. Knowing well the joys of transcendental pleasures, how can a liberated soul agree to enjoy false pleasure? In the Padma Puran, it is said, Ramante yogino nante satyanande chiratmani. Ite ramapade naso padam brahmabhidiyate. The mystics derive unlimited transcendental pleasures from the absolute truth, and therefore the supreme absolute truth, the personality of Godhead, is also known as Rama. And the word anante means unlimited, but it also means doesn't come to an end, without an end. An end is an anta. Ananta means without an end. So that's, I'll continue reading here. Now comes a famous verse from Lord Rishabdev, who's an incarnation of Krishna, and he speaks in the 5th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. And the following verse, the first verse of the 5th chapter of the 5th canto, and when Srila Prabhupada was in India in the mid-70s, he was going to different cities, and everywhere he went, he spoke on this verse. This is such an important verse. So it goes like this: Nayam deho deha bhajang naloke kashtan kaman arate vidbujanghe topo divyam putraka yena sattvam shuddye jismad brahma saukyam tvanantam. So Rishabdev is speaking to his sons before he goes to the forest and renounces, and he's going to become a mendicant. My dear sons, there's no reason to labor very hard for sense pleasure while in this human form of life. Such pleasures are available to the hogs. Rather, you should undergo penances in this life by which your existence will become purified, and as a result, you will be able to enjoy unlimited transcendental bliss. Therefore, those who are true yogis or learned transcendentalists are not attracted by sense pleasures, which are the causes of continuous material existence. The more one is addicted to material pleasures, the more one is entrapped by material miseries. Om Jnana Timarandasya Jnanandana Shalakaya Chakshur Unminitam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkest of ignorance, but my spiritual master opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisance to him and all members of Shri Parampara. So this verse and the verse in the purport are kind of sobering, because in ordinary consciousness we are trying to find some kind of sense pleasure. Even if it's just eating. Eating is a necessity for life, and we know we like to eat foods that taste good. And so much of material life is absorbed in getting, cooking, or going out to dinner and so many things. And if you don't have that opportunity, it becomes a big problem. Then how do we eat? How do we sustain the body? So it's more than just sense pleasure in that case. We all have to eat, and we all know that we like to eat in Krishna consciousness. After this little talk and another kirtan, we'll have what is known as the Sunday feast. So we're also eating. So what's the difference? We have our main cook here, is Bhakta Saul, who is no longer Bhakta Saul. He's now Sankarshan Das. He came in wearing a nice orange dhoti. He just got initiated this morning from his spiritual master Pralananda Swami, who was in, what was what is it? Slovakia. In other words, very far east. So we had it this morning, so he could, do it. Otherwise, it was a very ecstatic experience. So, what does that mean when someone takes initiation? Because it relates exactly to this verse. Both of these verses, this idea. And that is that by nature, we are not the body, we are spirit soul. That's the first lesson of the Bhagavad Gita. Krishna teaches in the 2nd chapter. And there's one verse in there that kind of sums up the whole lesson in the soul, 20 verses in the soul. Najayate mriyate vakadachin. Nayam bhutva bhavitan bhanabuya. Ajo nitya shastrato yam purano nahanyate hanyamane sharire. Which means that for the jiva soul, the particle of consciousness, which is really us, we're never born and we never die. Najayate mriyate va. And it's not like there's new souls being generated all the time and others are going out of existence. No. We are as eternal as Krishna is. Aja nitya shashrata yam purano. He says it in 4 different ways. We're unborn, eternal, ever existing, and primeval. And then the last line, the soul is not slain when the body is slain. And the word slain is used because they're on a battlefield. And Arjuna is worried about killing his relatives and his beloved guru and Bhishma Dev, who acted as a grandfather and so forth. In other words, it's not just an ordinary war, but it's a fratricidal war. That's this battle of Kurukshetra. And there's one verse in the first chapter where he's looking on the army, and he sees in the opposite army, in the opposing army, his friends and his cousins and all kinds of relatives, and then, you know, and his own army, of course, is also filled with his friends. And so he's thinking, what's the point of this battle? You know? Because he's thinking in terms of his own sense gratification. What do I need this kingdom for? You know? The people I love, if I win the war and I get the kingdom, then the kingdom will be soaked with the blood of the people who I love. And what kind of pleasure is that? Let me go off to the forest. I'll become a mendicant and just, you know. But he's not suited for that. And the main thing is that Krishna wants him to fight. Because Krishna has a mission. And he explains the mission very succinctly in the 4th chapter. Well, he says why he appears in this world. Yada yada hi dharmasa glani bhavati bharata abhyutanam adharmasa tadatmanam sujamyaham. Whenever and wherever there is an uprise of irreligion and real dharma has become covered, then I appear, I come, in order to reestablish dharma, to help my devotees who are usually being persecuted by the adharmis, and to wipe away the miscreants who are prosecuting. So what is the importance? Why is it so important to worry about dharma? Whether we're following dharma and whether we really know what the real dharma is. This is the essence of the Bhagavad Gita. Like Arjuna is, you may know the context. It's 18 chapters in a very long book, the Mahabharata. I don't know how many chapters there are, but there are hundreds of them. And so this is a small section, but it's the essence of the spiritual instruction that Krishna will give. And so it happened that in this age, 5,000 years ago, that the adharmis, or what we call the asuras, demons, had taken over the world, basically. And why is Krishna concerned about that? Because we're all related to him as children. Aham bija pratakpada, he says in the 14th chapter. I am the seed-giving father for every living entity, not just human beings, every alive organism, person in the world, being, is ultimately fathered by Krishna. And so, when there is a discrepancy in dharma, genuine dharma, then people suffer. We suffer more. And this was prevalent in those days. There was Hiranyakashipu, that was much earlier, but Kamsa and all kinds of other dharmic things are going on. So Krishna came in order to reinstitute dharma. So then the question is, what is that dharma? What is the essence of dharma? Why is that important for us? So, first of all, Arjuna has a critical point. You know, if you read the Bhagavad Gita, the first chapter, he is referring to the Vedas and the knowledge in the Vedas as to reasons why he shouldn't fight. And he says, well, look, if I fight this battle, then so many men will be killed, right? And what will happen to their wives? They'll become unprotected, and it'll wreck society. We'll have, unprotected children. I don't want to be responsible for that. I'll get so much sin, and I'll ruin society, so I don't want to fight. And he was citing the Vedas, because that's part of the Vedic knowledge, is that women should always be protected, and it should be, like that. So he was making that argument. But ultimately, he was using that argument because he felt heartbroken that he would be responsible for killing not only the enemy, but also his ardent friends and relatives. So he was paralyzed. But then, in text 7 of chapter 2, everything kind of comes to a head. And he surrenders to Krishna. He's arguing with Krishna. Krishna says, get up and fight. How does this, the opposing warriors who highly respect your fighting prowess will think that you left out of fear. You're a coward. And what could be more painful for someone who's been honored as a great fighter than to have his name, drawn in the mud? So this is not, in that particular verse, Krishna is not speaking any transcendental knowledge. He's giving what the charioteer is supposed to do for the warrior, trying to buck up his courage so that he'll go and fight, So Arjuna has an argument, no, the whole thing will be soaked with the blood of the people I love, I don't want to fight. But then he says, Karpan nidosho pahatat swabhava prichami tvam dharma samudachet. There's the word dharma again. Dharma samudachetak. Yakshayakshyan nishtitam bruhitan me shishyasteham shadimam tvam papannam. This is where Arjuna surrenders to Krishna as a guru, not just as a friend. Because Prabhupada says I think the purport and many lectures on these verses, that friends can talk from here to eternity and they'll never come to a conclusion. And back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Because there's no authority, I got this idea, you got that idea, whatever. But when you find a qualified spiritual master, and who could be more qualified than Krishna? He's the Adi Guru. He's the original spiritual master of all of us. So Arjuna says, due to this miserly weakness, because he's taking stock now, I've lost my real nature. What is it? Karpanya upahata swabhava. It has taken away my real nature as a very brave and heroic fighter. So Baba, pritchami tvam dharma samudacheta. I am dharma samudacheta. The very important point is that I am bewildered about what the right thing is to do, what real dharma is in this case. My heart is telling me, my guts are telling me, I don't want to fight. I don't want to kill this friend of mine and this cousin, forget it, But my head is telling me, you want to fight for higher reasons to reinstitute dharma in the world in the person of Yudhishthira and Arjun's other brothers. That's the whole point. And so I'm paralyzed now. So I'm asking you please tell me for certain what is the best Shreya. Ultimate Shreya. Shreya is the ultimate good. Prayas is immediate good. That's the sense gratification. What will please me now? But what is for the good of all and for ultimately the best good of, that's Shreyas. We should be concerned with Shreyas rather than Prayas. So then it says, Shishyas teham. Now I'm your Shishya. I'm not your friend. I'm not in the role of your friend. Shishya, Prabhupada explains, Sanskrit is such a perfect language. And there are roots for each word. The word, for instance, the word of the root of the word dharma is dri, this little syllable dri, which is very close and very close to me to giridhari, to support. That which support, the essential nature of something is its dharma. I always give the example because we always have chairs. Now we put out these chairs, right? It has a dharma. What's the essential nature of a chair? Tapas, what does it do? Yeah, it'll hold you up. You sit down on, you have faith, right? You sit down on the chair, it's good. It's a Hare Krishna place. We don't have lousy chairs. But if that chair collapses, it's not meaning it's dharma, you see? It's an adharmic chair. So we have our own dharma. The living entities have a dharma, which means our essential nature that's always there. And you know what that is? To serve. It's to serve. The ultimate perfection of that dharma is eternal service to Krishna. And Prabhupada would always give the example of the body itself. Here's my hand. What's the dharma of the hand? To do what I want to do. Want it to do. I don't think twice, right? I want some water, I lift here. The hand is working. I'm not thinking, send them. No, I'm just thinking, I want the hand does it. If the hand doesn't do it, it's paralyzed, then it's a dharmic hand, right? And you have to remove it or fix it. Right? So Arjuna is saying, I don't know what my dharma is now. My heart is telling me one thing and my head is telling me another. So I'm saying, prapannam, I surrendered unto you as a guru. Meaning, you're now whatever you say, I'm ultimately going to follow. Although he has questions, but in the end he says, Kadashe vachanantava, I will do as you say. So this is the point. And throughout the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna goes through different different aspects of yoga. Jnana yoga, karma yoga, dhyana yoga, 6th chapter. And of course, bhakti yoga. It all eventually culminates in bhakti yoga, which has elements of all of them. Meditation, any of us, some of you are probably serious chanters of Hare Krishna on the beads. This is part of it, meditating on japa. Krishna says in the 10th chapter, Yajnanam japa yajyosmi. Of all sacrifices, I am japa. Now that was before the present age. Now the greatest sacrifice is Sankirtan. Still chanting the holy name, but chanting together. Japa is also part of it, part of the process. But even more important is congregational chanting. So, what is the purpose of this dharma? And that's answered very nicely near the beginning of the Srimad Bhagavatam, the Bhagavad Purana. This was Prabhupada's great opus. He started this book in India. He met a friend. He was distributing these Back to Godhead magazines for years. Some of them were like a few sheets of like newsprint, but he would print it, every week or every month, rather. And somehow he would go on the street and distribute them himself. It was very heroic. And then once a friend said, these magazines are nice, but you should write some books. some actual books, because people will keep them more. You know, the magazines, they get lost, you know, like that. So yes, and he picked the Srimad Bhagavatam. You know, he starts out, it's going to be a 60-volume work. You know, he's elderly. He started, it was 1961, with very little money. He's typing it himself, you know. And eventually he got 3 volumes printed, the first canto. And this was a great, by that time, he had decided that he had to somehow try to follow his spiritual master's order to preach Krishna consciousness in English in the Western countries. He's 69 years old. He's not in the best of health, doesn't have much money. And somehow he begs passage on a steamliner, on a cargo ship, from a pious Vaishnavi lady, Sumarti Maraji, in Bombay. And in, was it August? Yeah, August of 1965, he embarks on this impossible trip. He has no money. He has basically no friends on the other side. You know, he's going to America for the first time. He's never been on a ship. He's just been on trains and things. And sure enough, he got seasick. He had a couple of heart attacks, you know. But he survived, obviously. And he started preaching, and it's an incredible story. I highly recommend this book that Satsrup Maharaj wrote, his great opus of the Srila Prabhupada Lilamrita, which is available from the Bhaktivedanta Book Trust. It tells the whole history of Prabhupada's preparation, a lifetime in preparation, starting from his childhood. You know, his father was a wonderful Vaishnav, and when Prabhupada, he asked him if I could do my own Ratha Yatra. He's like 5 years old, you know. So his father, yes, okay. So he bought him a little cart, you know. So then Prabhupada did his own Ratha. He got the little kids together. You know, it's a wonderful story from the early days. He was doing Ratha Yatra for Lord Jagannath. So he finally did that, and what was the purpose? Because he felt to be an agent of Krishna for reinstituting Dharma, and especially Krishna in the form of Lord Chaitanya. Krishna comes as Lord Chaitanya, the figure on the left here. Lord Chaitanya is the one on our right, and Nityananda, his very close associate and fellow avatar, if you will, is on the left. And there, they simplified it so much. You don't have to do yoga, you know, you don't have to go to the Himalayas and meditate, you know, or do that, or it doesn't cost you. Just stay in your position. Prabhupada, this Ramananda Roy would quote this verse, Stane stita, Shrutigatam tanuvan manobhir. But here, you focus on the sound. It's beginning and ending with the Hare Krishna mantra. But so many other sounds support that. And that is the Dharma of the age. And what is the essence of it? In the Bhagavatam we find, first canto, second chapter, 6th verse. What is that Dharma by which living entities can really taste real true happiness and become supersedity? The savai pung sang paro dharmo yato bhaktir arhokshaje ahaitukya pratayata yatma supersedity. This is a foundational verse for this whole movement, actually. So the answer is, Sutta Goswami was speaking, he had heard Shukadeva Goswami speak the original Bhagavatam, so he's repeating it. That is real Dharma, Paro Dharma, Supreme Dharma, which evokes the natural bhakti and love of the living entity for Krishna. And then he says, Yato Bhakti Rahokshade, what is the quality of that bhakti? It has to be unmotivated and uninterrupted to fully satisfy the self. So unmotivated means there's a motivation, but it's fully spiritual. The one motivation in the pure devotees that we say is to please Krishna. You know? Whatever, and that's why he looks so happy. He's happy that you're here. He's happy to hear the kirtan. He's happy to be here so that he can accept service, because he knows that is the medicine that can cure the disease of birth and death, is the service to him. So then it's explained in some more verses. And the key is to develop the interest in hearing about Krishna. That's called, what is it? Vasudeva Kataruchi. Kata means talks about Krishna. Taste in hearing, interest in hearing. Now that's not a natural thing. In other words, in the conditioned state, what's in it for me? You know, let's go to the movies. I always give the example, forgive me, but it's just so appropriate. What is it, 50 feet down the street, on the corner there, they still have a bar. I think it keeps changing ownership, but it's there, you know. So you made the decision to come in here. You could have easily just gone down there and gone into the bar, you see. Well, what's the difference? It's different. You know that whatever pleasures might be there, and probably for you it wouldn't be anything at this point. I mean, I can't dream of going to a bar at this point. But I mean, it's a lot of people think, oh yeah, we can have a drink and watch the game. You know, there's millions of people in this country watching the game now, right? And drinking and watching the game and rooting, and they all put money down on gambling. But they're practically violating the 4 regs just in this, all at the same time. So, what is it? Well, there's some pleasure there. It has a pleasure there, but it has a beginning and an end, and it's the source of all misery. Even if they win the bet, even if their team wins, it's not. The result is they'll come back next year to see it again, you know, and then they will die thinking of that football game, and who knows what is going to happen to them. You see the problem? In other words, any sense pleasure, it's not pleasing the Krishna. It's your senses. You're a servant. You're a servant. You're a servant of the senses. You're not servant of Krishna. The idea is to use the senses in the service of Krishna. You want to hear music, nice music. Well, don't hear some karmi, you know, some materialistic music. Hear a nice bhajan about Krishna. The YouTube is full of them. You can listen to Prabhupada singing so many wonderful kirtans. It's available, you know. And we have our live music here, you know. And that's pleasing to Krishna, His holy name. And it can also be materially pleasing. Wonderful drumming, you know, and beautiful songs and things. It's beauty about it. Even I'll give you a sample. My you know, little attempts at writing poetry for Krishna, but because it's about Krishna, there's a certain taste there, you know. So, like there's this very pertinent verse that I'll share with you. This was spoken by Lord Chaitanya to Sanatana Goswami, his prime disciple. When Sanatana was able to get free of Serbia, he had been a prime minister in the government in Bengal. You can imagine the position. And when after he met Lord Chaitanya, he said, "This is ridiculous." Lord Chaitanya asked him to go to Vrindavan and with his brother and just write books and do what they did, you know, as sannyasis. So somehow they extricated themselves from the service of this Nawab. And he doesn't go to Vrindavan first. He goes to Banaras, where Lord Chaitanya was, and he was instructed for 2 months. And the most extensive, this is the great value of the Chaitanya Charitamrita. This book, 9-volume book, that's available from the BBT. It has the wonderful, all-attractive pastimes of Lord Chaitanya and his followers, but it also has the philosophy in the most advanced form, you know, given very wonderfully by Krishnadas Kaviraj, one of the greatest writers in our movement. Early on, he was a contemporary of some of the Goswamis. He lived in Vrindavan. So Lord Chaitanya chose this verse to practically begin his instructions on the section dealing with the activities of devotional service, beyond the philosophy of it. So it says, Kama dinang katina katita padita dhurni deshas. Tesham jata mayana karuna naptapano upashanti. Utsrijayatan adiyatupatam sambratam labda buddhis tvamayatak shadanam abhayam mamdayung svatmadasye. Now some of you may have recognized some of the words in there. Abhayam. This is in Prabhupada's name. Abhaya Chadanaravinda. It means fearless at the lotus feet of Krishna. So what I put in a little poem, this verse. In how many ways have I sought to obey the seductive demands of my wicked desires? They've shown me no mercy, yet on I've gone shamelessly trying to quench lust's unquenchable fires. But now I'm rejecting these hellish desires, for my higher intelligence now has awoken. O Krishna, O shelter of fearlessness, please let me serve you with faith that will never be broken. So, we're servants. Either we're going to serve Krishna, or we're going to serve Maya. And Maya is in the form of these demands of our mind, demands of our senses. In this age especially, we're helpless. You know, from every direction are coming these, you know, from the phone and from the billboards and from your friends, you know, enjoy this, you know, take this drug. It really makes you, it's wonderful, you know, you get a better high, you know. The early movements were started in the Lower East Side in the 60s, which was the heart of one of the two beating hearts of the hippie movement, which is centered on drugs, LSD, and free sex, you know, and some inquiries, you know, into these experiences they were having with the drugs. So they were in that culture. So when his first followers, they were giving up the drugs, for chanting. That's one of the first things Prabhupada insisted. No, you have to follow these regulations. No free sex, illicit sex, no intoxication, no gambling, and no meat eating. Well, the meat eating was probably the easiest one, because Prabhupada was cooking. He was teaching them how to cook, prasadam. And they would come for lunch, So that was, but gambling, probably not too hard. But the others were difficult. But they were able to do it. The first initiates, they took vows and so forth. So they asked Prabhupada if they make up a little pamphlet or a flyer. Stay high forever. Chant the holy name. They had Prabhupada chanting, a picture of him. That's the idea. So anyway, back to this verse. So we have these senses, and when we serve them, then we get there's some sense gratification. That plants a seed in our consciousness to do it again and enjoy it again, right? And then there's also the karma. If it's a sinful desire activity, then there's going to be suffering to pay for it. So this is how we're existing in this world. Now all of us have come up to the human form. And it's taught how it come up through the species. We all have a background. By Krishna's grace, we've forgotten it. Does anyone remember their last 100 births here? Or maybe even 2 births? 1 birth? No? We're fortunate. Who wants to remember that, But we should know that we had them and that we'll have future birth. We don't die. I put it into a little ditty. Every body dies. This is a body. Every single body dies. Every body dies. Nobody dies. Wake up, and open your eyes. You're not that body, you're a pure spirit soul. Chant the holy name and attain life's goal. Now that goal includes pleasure that's thousands and millions of times greater than the flickering sense pleasure that we've sold out for. This is told in Rupa Goswami's Nectar of Devotion. The Brahmananda, being free of this material body and merging into the white light of Brahman, free of birth, old age, disease, and death. What could be more blissful than that? Here I am. I am that I am. I'm just conscious being. There's no other beings here, just me and the consciousness. What a wonderful existence. No, because we are intrinsically persons with spiritual senses and spiritual desires to serve Krishna. It's all been distorted in matter. And so Brahman is not our natural place. And so there's a very important verse, I'll spare you the Sanskrit, where it's described that through great austerity, because you have to deny these demands of the senses and the mind. That's what this verse is all about. And if you're able to do that through force of will, and you're saying the right mantras, Om, 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 then you can rise up to the Brahman platform. But you'll never be satisfied, and you come back down. You come back down because you're not really purified. And you'll do some altruistic work and so forth, but it's not transcendental. So how can we stay high forever? How could we go transcend birth and death and go to that place where we're fully satisfied and we'll never want to come back down? That's the spiritual world where we came from. Prabhupada's immortal phrase, go back home, back to Godhead. So we all have that intrinsic swarup. A swarup means your own form, and it includes the form and the function, your activities. We have a unique relationship with God. It could be one of the categories, friends, or parents, or servants, or lovers, But it'll be rasa means the pleasure we get from relationship, different varieties of pleasure. But in this material world, they're perverted, they're distorted, and temporary. Even the most beautiful, most pure and wonderful relationship of a mother with a newborn child, is simply concerned with that the child is comfortable, well-fed, healthy, and happy. You know what I mean? It doesn't want anything else from the child. You just be happy and healthy, right? That's love. But the child grows up, and things change and they grow away, right? I mean, that's what happens. So it can't be permanent. But that relationship with Krishna that we have, it's permanently there. And so bhakti yoga is meant for us to gradually discover that through the processes that have been given by our previous acharyas, tried and true processes, given by Rupa Goswami, who learned directly from Lord Chaitanya, who's Krishna himself. There's like a little syllogism that's the basis of this movement. There is a God. First of all, we have to kind of have a preliminary. And Krishna is God, and Lord Chaitanya is Krishna. Those three things. And then Lord Chaitanya is practically contemporary. 500 years is nothing compared to these, 5,000 for Krishna and Brahma's lifetime of 311 trillion, 40 billion. Who could even imagine it? Brahma is our original guru. He's the original student of Krishna in our line, head of the Sampradaya. But we don't have to worry about all those times. We simply need to understand that the previous verse describes, because this verse that I began the talk with is, okay, the Nateshu Ramate Buddha, the intelligent don't take part in these sense pleasures, but that's all we know right now. How can we find some other source of pleasure? That's spoken of in the previous verse. Bayasparsheshu asaktatma vindajatmani yatsukam sab brahma yoga yuktatma sukamakshay mashnate. A liberated person is not attracted to material sense pleasure, but is always in trance, enjoying the pleasure within. In this way, the self-realized person enjoys unlimited happiness, for he concentrates on the Supreme. Now, of course, Krishna will develop in chapter 9, chapter 18, will be more explicit about bhakti. But here's the basic idea. Brahma, in this case, is Krishna himself. Yoga yuktatma, through the process of yoga, which means linking the mind, linking the senses, everything to Krishna. Sukham akshaya mashnate. One enjoys unending happiness. Now, this may seem like a pipe dream, because all we know is this temporary flickering happiness. But we saw examples of it in Srila Prabhupada. We could see that he was always enjoying that bliss within. Even when there were difficulties on the outside, he had an island, or he had this position of unshakable peace and happiness in himself, because he was thinking of Krishna at every second. And he was chanting his name, remembering qualities, pastimes, life, everything, the form of the deity, you see? So that link that we develop through the process of devotional service, purification, until it comes to the point where we have to be in connection with Krishna. That's like practically breathing, They can't live without that. So, and it's giving them a constant pleasure. And when you finally leave this body, you go back to the spiritual world for an eternal life of bliss and knowledge. Now, it's not easy to do that. But what's wonderful, another wonderful verse in the Bhagavad Gita, Neha bhikkamanashosti pratyabhayam vidyate. In this process of devotional service, there's no loss and there's no diminution. Think about it. Any practice you do, right? Anything. Just listening, through my Helter Skelter lecture, it's something. I'm reading from Prabhupada's book, there's the deities. So this is yoga. This is bhakti yoga. So this is in your eternal bank account. Means you will be human beings in your next life. The greatest danger, in the same verse, he says, Sropamapya sadharmasa trayate mahato bayat. Even a little advancement on this path can protect you from the greatest type of danger. You know what the danger is? The greatest danger? Who can say? Go ahead, Mark. I'm sorry? Yes, very, very good. To lose this precious human form, and we don't die, but we can lose it and go down to a lower species and then have to come back up again. So don't waste the time. Don't waste this. I give the example all the time. The lottery. The lottery is being played. Devotees don't play the lottery. That's one of the regular symbols. But it's pretty amazing, because I've been walking around the block, and there's a place on the corner that lists the lottery, And I've been in it since '89. He said, lottery is $10 million, $20 million, Now it goes up to 500 million. They even had one that's over $1 billion. Do you know that? Can you imagine people dreaming, it could be me, line up and... we have won the lottery. You are all winners of the lottery. Forget that stupid lottery, which will disentangle you more. But we're human beings, and we're human beings who have some interest in Krishna consciousness. Otherwise, you wouldn't be sitting here. So my request to you, my humble request is, pursue it. Read Prabhupada's books, chant Hare Krishna, investigate it. It's the reason why how could this movement keep growing all these years? We would get arrested. There's such a difficulty in Bombay and other places, But it's still going on because it's genuine. Even a little taking up, you feel something. One session of chanting Hare Krishna with a kirtan or good japa, and you're going to experience it. Yeah, there's something here. You know, what is it I'm feeling? And then you could read in the books you associate with devotees. Because Krishna is in the heart of every one of us. And He's responding to your genuine effort to chant His name, hear about Him, think about Him, pursue the Bhakti Yoga as taught in Prabhupada's books. So here is the alternative to sense gratification. Enjoying the pleasure within. Isn't it wonderful to understand that we carry within our hearts the source of unlimited pleasure? Krishna's there. He says several places in the Bhagavad Gita, Sarvasya chaham mridisannavishto, I am in the hearts of everyone as the super soul. From me come knowledge, remembrance, and forgetfulness. I am the knower of the Vedas, the compiler of Vedanta. The goal of all the Vedic knowledge is to know me, he says in that one verse. You see? So if we have faith, this is the key element of faith in Krishna's words, then we can apply our mind and our will to practice devotional service, even the few beginning practices. I started out chanting 2 rounds a day. I had a job, I had a car and an apartment, you know. And this was back in 71, you know. And I was working and go do Hatha Yoga and this and that, you know. Anyone know Amala Bhakta Swami? Does that name ring a bell to some of you? He made a lot of recordings. Yeah, from the old times. So he was my first yoga teacher. And later on when he joined, I was working for the BTG, and he told gave an article, How I Came to Krishna Consciousness. And we sat down in my office and I wrote it down. Fascinating story. He's still around. He's over 90 now. He's a Swami and he's in LA. Wonderful devotee. But he was a yoga teacher. He had his own ashram. They invited him to run a place in Rishikesh, you know. But by that time, he caught the bhakti bug. And he said, no, I'm going to investigate. And he went across town to the 55th Street Temple, heard Ridhyananda Maharaj speak, and that was it. You know, he was he was convinced. And he came back to LA, and he joined there. So it's a genuine system, and it is ever new enlivenment, and so much is there in the literature. Srila Prabhupada gave us the whole, you know, he wasn't able to finish the Bhagavatam, and I had the greatest blessing in my life to be able to work with a team to help finish the Srimad Bhagavatam, 10th, 11th, and 12th cantos. But he gave us the Chaitanya Charitamrita and the Bhagavad Gita and the Nectar of Devotion and other books, Nectar of Instruction. And all of them give us very consistent and authorized instructions about practicing Krishna consciousness, and so much about Krishna's life. You know, the 10th canto, he gave us Krishna book. So all in an effort to attract us to Krishna, the all-attractive. And if you allow yourselves to be attracted by practicing, beginning especially with the chanting, then you'll see that it's beyond the limits of the body. You know, if you get to be an old man, you know, or an old woman, oftentimes there's a lot of lamentation because you can't do what you once did. Oh, you know, this isn't working so well anymore. That's not what I can't see, you know, like that. But the wonderful thing about Krishna consciousness is that if you're really practicing seriously, then even in old age, you can be very ecstatic. I remember seeing Prabhupada was that way, and some of his godbrothers. What was his name? Krishnadas Babaji. I don't know if you ever saw him. But he was beloved of everyone. He just liked to chant Hare Krishna. He got a special dispensation even when he was a brahmachari. He was just chanting all the time, and the other brahmacharis went to Bhaktisiddhanta and complained. He doesn't want to do any service. He's just chanting all the time. Can you? And Bhaktisiddhanta said, if you can do that, chant all the time, you can do what he's doing. And no one else tried to do it. He was so attracted to chanting Hare Krishna. And when the devotees started coming, I met him one time in one of Prabhupada's godbrothers' other godbrothers' ashrams. And I went into the gate, and, you know, being a foolish brahmachari, you know, I said, would you like to hear a nice verse? You know, like he knows all the verses, of course. So he said, yes. So I did one from the Krishna Karnamrita. Maybe it was this one. You like this one. This is near the end. Jaya 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 Deva 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 Tribhavana Mangala Divyanama Deha Jaya 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 Deva Krishna Deva Shravana Mano Nayanama Tavatara. I didn't have the poem at that time, but I'll give you the poem. But it says, "O glory, 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 Lord, O glory unto Thee, who with Thy holy name bless all three worlds and set them free. O glory, glory, glory unto Thee, O Krishna Dev, whose nectar floods our ears and eyes and hearts in endless waves." In endless waves. So whatever verse I said, he was very happy to hear that. And he started laughing. He was known for that, for laughing and being very jolly all the time in Krishna consciousness. And he encouraged me to memorize all the verses of the Krishna Karnamrita. And I haven't done it yet. If I'm going to do it, I got to start. So I'm going to start. But there's 112 verses. I have maybe a dozen or two memorized. But he was, he was in his 70s then, and I'm in my 70s now. But the kirtan is just as fresh or more than it was when I was 25 or more. It's because it's not something dependent, on your external age. So that's kind of proof that pleasure is there. And if you hook up to it by the process of devotional service, then you can also enjoy the sukham akshayam ashnute. Just imagine what it's like. No drugs, nothing like that. It's all wholesome, completely wholesome pleasure, I mean, we didn't get any exercise except dancing on the street. Everyone was in great shape, It was a battle between how much halva we were eating and how much we could burn off on the street, because we were all young men. But it is a very wholesome lifestyle, and this knowledge is really essential for succeeding in our human form of life. So I encourage you, please take. If you don't have the Bhagavad Gita as it is, please get a copy tonight. They're not very expensive, and we have classes every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday in the evening. They're on YouTube. And there's Tapas. He can tell you just how to get on. And we're in the 4th chapter again. We went around several times. And now we've actually finished the 4th chapter. We just began the 5th chapter, which is this chapter that has this verse in it. So please join us. Take a book. Begin chanting Hare Krishna. And learn from the devotees how to practice in your life. It's not very difficult, and there's so many pictures you can put on the wall and music that you can play. Or if you want it, you can surround your life with Krishna consciousness, and it's a wonderful life. So, any questions on any of these points? We have a gentleman over here. We have a mic. We may have an audience.
Prabhu, I have 3 questions. Can I ask, please?
We'll start with one.
Yeah, the first one is, when Krishna talks about sacrifice, right? So I believe that when we sacrifice our sins, that is the biggest sacrifice that anybody can do. So we need to sacrifice our sin. God did not ask us to sacrifice.
I'm not sure what you mean. Sacrifice our sins?
Yeah, means getting rid of it. Like sacrifice is what? It is the act of taking off. So getting rid of our sins. So if we don't commit mistakes, if we don't go behind kama, krodha, moha, mada, matsara, if we get rid of all that, that is the biggest thing, biggest sacrifice that we can do.
Yes. It's sacrificing the immediate pleasures of the senses and the mind for doing your duty in Krishna consciousness, which over time becomes much more pleasing than any of the sense gratification. There comes a point, and Prabhupada quotes this famous verse from Yamunacharya, Yadavadi Mamachete Krishna Padaravinde, where he's remembering he was a king at one point. He had been a great scholar, he became a king for some time. And he had all the advantages of a king. And then he's saying, since I've been engaged in the transcendental loving service of Krishna, realizing ever new pleasure in him, whenever I think of sex pleasure, I spit at the thought and my lips curl into the distaste. In other words, he became that much transcendental that didn't even attract him, remembering what he had done. So that's the idea, is that yes, that it is a sacrifice, but the wonderful thing in Krishna consciousness is that after a while it's not a sacrifice. It's just normal. Like getting up early to come to Mangalartik. I've been doing that for 50 years. It's not like, all right, I got to grit my teeth. Can I really get? No, it's just like natural. You get up, take a shower, and come to the temple. But the first time, that was hard. I remember waiting in line, and the real hard part, the cold shower. Oh my God. It was like late March in New York. It was still part of winter, and there was no hot water. And I was, waiting in line. Can I do this, or am I going to have to leave the temple? So it comes to my turn, and then I remembered there's this heating breath. I used to do hatha yoga, you know. It's amazing. Try it. And so to this day, you know, I'm taking that cold shower, but I'm breathing like that, and you don't really feel it. You get through it. You said, you know, it's a sacrifice for Krishna. So after a while, it becomes second nature. And the things that were once tapasya, you know, grit and bear it, become sources of pleasure. And the things that were once pleasure, no thank you. You know that that's degrading and you're not even attracted anymore. This is the difference. In Krishna consciousness, you sublimate the desires, you don't deny them. Meaning that you purify the desires. Desire from music and dance and playing musical instruments. It's a natural way. That can be also very binding. Think of the raves and the rock concerts and all that stuff with playing musical instruments, hearing, you know, and dancing. But it's all Maya. It's all in the modes of nature. But here, Lord Chaitanya said, we'll take that same playing musical instruments, dancing and singing, and we'll turn it into kirtan, and it'll transcend. It's so powerful. Your whole body's involved. You're dancing, you're seeing the deities, you're hearing, and if you really sniff, you'll smell the prasadam cooking and the incense. All the senses are involved, and you're hooked. Every one of them is related to Krishna, reminds you of Krishna. So, yes, the sacrifice becomes second nature after some time. Whereas those who don't have Krishna, some impersonal yoga, it's harder and harder, you know, tapasya, and it can, you know, you can become hard-hearted from all that pranayama and austerity, you know, because there's no bhakti, there's no love. Whereas devotees, they're trying to help everyone become Krishna conscious, and they're full of attraction and affection for people in general. And it wouldn't hurt an ant, you know. That poor, you know, animal, he comes in, fortunate he heard the kirtan. Let's not crush him, you know. Take him out to the garden. It's real life. Okay, more questions?
Yeah.
All right, we have a few minutes.
Yeah. If a child, assume that a child born to a thief, so when the child is raised up, so the child is taught by the thief to go and steal. So now the dharma of the child is to go and steal. So now the child thinks that he needs to abide to what his father says to him. So now, if we stick to our dharma, means dharma is the act of doing your duty, so how the child will understand that that is something which is wrong? Because the child has been, it has been instructed by the father, and the child follows the father's instruction. So in that scenario, how will the child get enlightenment? And how will the child understand what Lord Krishna assumed that I go and give the Bhagavad Gita to the child, and the child says that, okay, I need to prescribe the duty that my father asked me to do. So it is doing its duty. And the father also tells the child...
Yeah, well, I understand the argument. The point is that these undharmic things that we take to be dharma, because it's due to ignorance. This is what Prabhupada's books, they're full of the real knowledge. Our dharma is defined, real dharma is defined in that second chapter, but at the second verse of the Bhagavatam, it talks about adharma. It says, dharma projita kaitava tra. Here in this Bhagavatam, we kick out all cheating dharmas, kaitava dharma. So-called dharmas that really don't bring the soul closer to Krishna, but simply, you know, entangle them more and more in material life, and chances are you lose the human form of life. There are certain laws of nature. Our actual ultimate dharma is the general dharma is to serve. But if we serve the lower modes, or we serve our father who's a thief, then we're going to be more and more degraded, and we may very lose the human form of life. So getting birth in a family of thieves or so forth, this is part of our karma from previous life. So therefore, somewhere along the way, we have to try to make an intervention. Krishna makes an intervention. We try to be his agents, so that we attract someone away from that sinful, molesy kind of life, that entangling life, to the liberating life of Krishna consciousness. And that's why we have devotees going out in the street. We have the parties. I spent my whole life, you know, working on these books, so that we can have literature. This is what Srila Prabhupada wanted. The whole idea is that we have the brain where we can think. Even the thief can think, what am I doing here? You know, he can also come to the conclusion if he has the right association. So the Dharma is not, is to serve, but if we're serving senses or misconceptions, then we're just entangling ourselves more in suffering. So we need to serve Krishna, his representatives, and in this way we'll be serving our own best interests. All right, we need to wind up in 3 minutes. Is there having any other questions or comments? Okay. You use the mic and speak loudly right into it.
Yeah, thank you. But what I think at the same time, your question, if you read the story about the Hiranyakashipu and Prahlad Maharaj, until the certain age only, till the age 8 or something, when child cannot analyze, then till that point it's going to be Matru Pitru Dharma. After that it wouldn't be, because automatically it sparks. When he comes, Prahlad Maharaj was roaming in a town, it sparked when he saw one Bhaktin was praying Krishna, and he said, there is someone above my father. And that's Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So up to certain age it may go, but Matru Pitru Dharma, that's why Guru is more than Matru Pitru, and Krishna is above that.
Matru Pitru means mother and father. I guess figure that out, right?
Yeah. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.
Thank you. Okay, 2 minutes of bliss. Okay, we have a question over here. Oh, there you go.
Something that came to mind when I was...
Hold up.
Oh, something that came to mind when I was listening to the lecture and hearing everybody's questions was the idea of sacrifice and the idea of dharma. So when I think about dharma and what we think of as our purpose, and you did also touch on it about how it's not exactly a sacrifice if it is...
Pleasure.
If it's... if it's our dharma.
Oh, if it's your
too.
Dharma. Yeah.
And earlier when we were here, the song Gopinath was playing. And that song is about, yes, the human form is the highest form that we can be in this lifetime. But at the same time, because we exist in this material world at this time, we are here living out our dharma because of the sins of our past life. So any advancement, any engagement with Krishna consciousness is dharma, is us. For example, it is. But anyway, we are absolving ourselves of our sins in this lifetime as human beings is us fulfilling our dharma. Whether it be a sacrifice, whether it be whatever that sacrifice looks like, us trying to do our best, basically, in this lifetime is our dharma.
Okay, what I would just stress here, because we're going to have another kirtan now, is that there's karma and there's dharma, and we shouldn't confuse the two. The dharma refers to what the soul is inherently, that is in there, and it doesn't change. It's what we're trying to discover and bring out. And but most of us, if you don't come in touch with the proper source of knowledge, and this is why it's so important, then we can be confused about what our real dharma in life is, just as Arjuna was confused. But he had the great source of real knowledge there, and we can also experience that. So we need to be willing to learn, and the real essence of of entering into the mysteries, because it's not immediately evident what's going on. We need to get in touch with the esoteric knowledge. Is this idea of surrender, which I stressed at the beginning with Arjun saying, I really can't figure it out, so I'm accepting you as the source of real knowledge, And that's how, Srila Prabhupada was able to get followers, because eventually through the kirtans and everything in the experience, they saw that Srila Prabhupada really was a realized soul, and so they were ready to listen to him and to do things that were a sacrifice, especially at first. But you could feel the change undergoing in your consciousness. So that's a very important first step to, as Arjun did, to surrender and not try to figure out, try to superimpose what we think we know on top of it, but just kind of receive. Prabhupada would call it this word shushusho in Sanskrit, which means submissive oral reception, ardent hearing, which allows the knowledge to flow in and to transform us, and so that we can really understand everything. Okay?
That makes really good sense. If you think about what you're exposing yourself to, and things that we can't control, like from our childhood, we don't control what family we're born into, who our parents are, what we're exposed to up to a certain age. Something my grandma told me was when you're a child, your parent experiences your karma for you up until, she said, like age 5. So once you become older than that, that's your karma. That's your karma that you are living out.
Well, okay, I'm not going to argue with that, but why don't we, because we mean to have some announcements and a little kirtan.
I got something I think.
Yeah, sorry to cut you off.